This is Reimagining the Contact Center. I'm Marc Bernstein, and today I'm interviewing Charanya CK Kannan, co-founder and CEO of Pinkfish. What I really loved about this interview is it is a true agentic AI company for the enterprise. Their target market is a little bit outside the contact center, but there's a ton the contact center can learn from this interview and where agentic AI is going. We talk the transition from RPA to AI agents. We talk what skills you need to actually do this well and set it up, and so much more. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did doing it. Everybody, CK, co-founder and CEO of Pinkfish. Great to see you. Thank you for coming on.
You too. Been a while.
The progress you all are making at Pinkfish is incredible. And maybe we could start with a brief background of your journey from Oracle to AT&T to the Chief Product Officer talk desk, now to Pinkfish. Like, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I always joke saying every company I've gotten like smaller and smaller company size, right? Like from Oracle to AT&T to Model to talk desk to I'm like, okay, I need to go even smaller. So we ended up starting a company, but it's been super fun. I think I started Oracle right when SaaS was kind of like starting to become the big thing. I think around the time when Salesforce has started. And, it's kind of like full circle because now everyone talks about SaaS being completely disrupted by AI. So it's, from a technology perspective, it's crazy to see what's happened in the last like 15 years. But it's actually even crazier to see what's happened in the last 15 months with AI. So really excited to be here today.
Yeah, it really is. I will tell you that I go to bed like feeling completely differently depending on the night. Sometimes I go to bed, be like, this is amazing. We're in like the AI rush. This is incredible. When people look back, and you hear people say, oh, I was in the .com era back in the day. That's us, but for AI. And then other nights I go to bed being like, super intelligence is just around the corner. It's going to be a totally crazy world. What's going on?
Yeah, yeah. As long as you don't watch Black Mirror, you would be fine. You'll sleep better.
I
But
do though.
it is crazy though. Like I go to bed a lot of times thinking, man, the last 1 year, technology has changed faster than I've ever seen before. And it's probably the same thing for yourself as well. And the fascinating thing is technology is changing or evolving faster than people know what to do with it at this point in time, right? So, there's like every month there's something new. And I talk to some of the enterprise, companies. They're like, what do I do with it? What is, MCP, or what is agentic AI, or what do I do with all of these? Where do I start? So there's like still a massive difference between how fast technology is evolving and people really knowing like what to do with all of these today. So it's super fascinating how fast things have changed just in the last 12 months.
Totally agree. And if you think about it, the technology is evolving at an exponential rate. Like you can actually look at almost every data point, even just Moore's law, how many transistors can we fit on a chip? You can look at the cost of compute, how much compute we can get per $1,000. You look at almost every metric, even the number of parameters a model is trained on. And all of them are like doubling or tripling or even 10xing. Really, really remarkable. But human change, human adaptability is not 10xing. We haven't gotten 10x more flexible and able to use 10 times the number of tools. So the technology is advancing here, and we're just adapting here. So it's creating this kind of interesting gap between what the technology is capable of and our social acceptance of being able to adopt it and use it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I still think it's a short-term challenge, right? Like people are always smart and, they learn and we adapt and we move forward. So I think, I think things are going in the right direction, but there is definitely going to be a short-term, clash in terms of like, okay, what do we do? How fast do we move? Like jobs and, so many things that are going on in the market right now. But eventually things will work out for the better is what I want to believe. And I think that's what will happen. But people are smart and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we usually do. At least historically, we always have. Could
Always.
you tell
Yeah.
us about Pinkfish and the founding of Pinkfish? Like what inspired you to start the company?
Sure, yeah. So I was at TalkDesk for about 6 years and decided to start the company around that time. And actually, my co-founder and I, Ben, had worked together for the last like 3 or 4 years before that. And one of the challenges we constantly saw in both of our jobs working with many customers was, every company have thousands of processes they want to automate, but they never end up getting to automating all of them. In fact, the one company that I'll never forget, we talked to one of the companies, Fortune 500, they have documented 1,000 process to automate across the organization. And over the last several years, they had gotten to automating 50 of them. And this was a massive party in the organization, right? They were just so happy. This was a big celebration. And, this was like one of the biggest moments in the history of the company. But again, they had automated 50 of the 1,000, and there were still 950 that were sitting there without, a path for automation. And that's when we thought, in this day and age, if 50 out of 1,000 is a massive celebration, there's something wrong, right? So like with AI, we're talking about how everything's going to change. And then here we have enterprise organizations still living with, ton of inefficiencies in their processes. And we thought to ourselves, like, there has to be a better way to do this. This was around the same time, we all started using tools like Copilot, which just brought so much joy in terms of how products can be built. So that's kind of the path we took. We said we're going to build an agentic automation platform that helps these companies take those 950 automations and really quickly turn them into real automation. And the path there would be you're describing in English, just like an AI software engineer would. It goes and writes software code, compiles it, and builds the automation for you. So that was the entire idea behind it. A lot of like deep AI there, but the ultimate problem was people were living with inefficiencies without having a path to get automation, and that just didn't make sense.
Incredible. So what do you think is the right pace to automate at? Like if that company could snap their fingers and all 1,000 processes are automated, is that too fast? Like how do they make sure that they are biting off the right amount? Or is the answer that no, automate everything and then see what doesn't work and strip it back? Like how do you guys see it?
Yeah, it's going to be an iterative process, right? Nothing happens overnight, and we see this right now. Like we're working with companies where, like some of the companies we work with, one retail company we work with, it's like, we're now the AI automation platform across the entire organization, from your, IT to your digital operations to merchandising to, like brand teams and, across the company. And the fascinating thing is it's so much faster to automate right now. But now companies are thinking about, what do I want to automate? Like, how do I document what I want? Because it is so easy to build as long as you know what needs to be built. And it is interesting that a lot of people want something, but if they have to articulate, this is what I want, it's not very easy, right? So we're kind of going through that process with multiple companies right now. So as long as you can think through what you want to automate and you can document it, you can automate it much faster. But I think, you're going to like go through that process of thinking about what needs to be automated. But one fascinating thing with AI projects right now is, people do something, they're like, this is great, we want more. And then they iterate on it. So I think it's going to be an iterative process where it's not that you're getting all 1,000 done overnight, but you're working on some things, you're improving it, because what's possible with AI is changing on a nightly basis right now. What was not possible today, it's going to be possible like next week, right? So it's an iterative process to get exactly what you want and more. But I do feel confident that with where we are, not just Pinkfish, but where we are as an industry right now, I think a lot of those inefficient processes that companies were going through, can be automated. We're, in very early stages as an industry for that. But it's there. It's going to happen in the next few years.
It's super cool that you guys are moving the bottleneck from actually building the automation to prioritizing what needs to be automated, deciding how it should be automated, having clarity around the specific steps that you would like the automation to take. And it just seems like that's probably a general trend with AI. It's collapsing the distance between you knowing what you want and then you actually getting that thing. And it's putting, I think, a very positive pressure on people and the users to say, well, then you need to know really well what you want.
Yeah, yeah. And this is like, this goes back to job satisfaction and really like joy in your life, right? Because I mean, not only with our customers, but we've worked with people that typically feel powerless oftentimes, right? So they're like, hey, I know what needs to be done, but I don't have enough resources to go get this done. And there's a feeling of powerlessness when something like that happens. Now you can take that power back to some extent and start thinking about how you could do some of these yourself potentially. So that's pretty exciting because a lot of people were creating these backlog and it goes into IT's backlog and they see that maybe after 2 years sometimes, and by the time they may or may not be in the company, right? So it's like, how do you kind of keep moving those backlog items faster, not just your challenges, but looking at some of the opportunities as well?
I love that point on job satisfaction so much. I was reading somebody the other day. I can't remember who it was. I'm going to say it was Aaron Levy at Box, but I hope I'm not misattributing it. And he was talking about what is the most important piece of advice I would give new college grads or folks just coming into the workforce. And he said, of course, learn AI. But he said, for real, learn AI, like get really, really good at it. Try to see, how much of your work you can do, because then you come into a company and, other folks don't know it as well. And you're going to like be a magician. You're going to be a magician. You're going to be able to be the person who can just somehow magically get all of these projects done at superhuman speed. And when you think about, you hear a lot of like, oh, the newer folks in the workforce, they don't have as much job satisfaction. They don't, see a path for them. They, want to be able to accomplish more and have a bigger impact. Well, this might be the avenue to do that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Actually, I'll never forget the one of the very first users we had. We got into a call, and there's still skepticism about AI, right? So when you go to a company and they start using AI, like the leader sometimes says you have to use AI. That's one of the reasons why a lot of the people end up using it, especially like a year and a half ago. And we were working with one user, and this is what she said in the meeting. She said, I was skeptical about AI. I always thought maybe AI will take our jobs, but I like AI when it actually helps me. And this actually helps me, which was like so great to hear, right? So like when people who are skeptics turn to be fans, and it's actually helping them and making their life better. It was just like so great to hear that.
Can you talk to us about agentic AI? We're hearing that a lot now.
Right.
And I think you guys have a really interesting take on old versus new, RPA being old, agentic AI being new. Like, how do you see that transition?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think RPA is really good in some areas, right? So like at a time when things were automation was really hard, especially if you don't have APIs. I think RPA did an amazing job in the last 6 to 10 years in helping companies automate that. RPA also drastically reduced the dependency on APIs. Again, APIs is a whole different story, but RPA reduced the dependency on APIs, and I think the last 5 to 10 years, RPA is basically the single reason why most companies were even able to get to that 50 out of the 1,000 automation. Right? Without that, everything will be manual process. So that's kind of what RPA did over the last few years, but it's still a massive project. It takes like 6 months to get a few automations set up, and it's brittle, it's hard to maintain, right? So those were some of the challenges from the past. And then on the other extreme is agentic, and for Pinkfish, our customers use both agentic and deterministic automation, and I think this is really important. Every company you go to, there will be some that needs deterministic automation and there will be some that needs agentic automation. And the difference is if you want something to run the exact same way the millionth time it runs the first and second time deterministically, then the deterministic automation is better. In fact, some of our customers, their entire price that goes to their e-commerce system goes through Pinkfish. It has to be absolutely same, absolutely accurate every single time, predictably, and some level of deterministic nature is better for those automations. And then you have automations where it thinks, it reasons, and it's creative every time. So these are great for content generation type automations, or even integration type automations where there's a little bit of room for the agent to go and pick her its own tools and reason and do the plan together. You get much better outcome much faster, but it's also not deterministic. So, but what we've seen in companies though is you need both. You need a combination of agentic automation a lot of times, but you also need the deterministic automation sometimes as well. And that's one of the stance we've taken with the platform Pinkfish, which is you can build both type of automations, agentic and deterministic.
Are you seeing that the learning curve for users is different between those two? Like, does the agentic automation require like more creativity? You have to like imagine what this thing can do, or like more, does it require something different, or how do you see those two learning curves?
Yeah, I think it's actually much easier to create an agentic automation than so in determinist, when you're creating a deterministic automation, you're having a lot more control. You're controlling what needs to happen, right? So you're working with the automation agent, but you're controlling what needs to happen. You're saying, go and call this tool and do this, and the agent kind of goes and does that. But in completely agentic automation, you're saying, this is my objective and here are some of the tools I'm going to give you, go do the job, right? And it's much easier to create an agentic automation, and it's great because it does the job for you, but just that for specific type of use cases, deterministic might be better, right? So it's more important, I think, to think about for what type of use cases, which one is better. If you want something that runs the same way every single time, deterministic is better. But if you want some level of creativity that needs to be built, then agentic is better. But agentic is much easier to create than deterministic for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I'm wondering if like it's funny, I just did a video on M dashes and how everyone's kind of up in arms about Chat GPT using too many M dashes and but I love M dashes and I hope they stay around and I don't want M dashes to be like, villainized, and that's that, the little dash and um
Yeah.
so, and a big kind of, point there is that, people use M dashes sometimes just to like get past lazy thinking. Like they haven't really finished their thought or finished their sentence, or they're not taking time to construct it well. So they just throw an M dash in there. And I think that's one of the reasons it's getting villainized. So by analogy, do you find that the agentic AI can be a crutch where someone's like, I haven't really fleshed this idea out, blah, do it. And
Yeah.
then that, they're not putting in the thought to get it right? Or do you feel like maybe it's just part of the creation process and users say this is step one. Step one is you block it out and then you see what it comes back to you with and you iterate. Like what are
Yeah.
you seeing from your users?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially on the agentic side, you're building something and you're iterating based on that, right? And you're always going to get some outcome. You're looking at the results and outcome and you're refining it further and further and further. And it takes like multiple iterations to get exactly what you want, but you still get something automated quickly. So yeah, and I think that's kind of become much easier right now than before, where you're giving it something, you're getting some outcome, and then you're iterating on that going forward. But the M dash one, I haven't seen it yet. I'll take a look at it. I've been thinking a lot about it.
If you wanted to be a person who is using this, who is setting this up, like you're in your job wherever you are, and you say, I know AI is the future. I am hearing so much about AI agents, and I know there's a bunch of deterministic rules that my company would like to be able to automate, but I don't know what skills to go get or what should I learn. Like, how do you see somebody start to pick up the skills and learn what they need to learn in order to be able to be the person who is able to set this sort of stuff up, the go-to person at their company?
Yeah, we think about this a lot because previously, if someone had to build something, you needed to know coding and go and build a software. In a world where building software has become so much easier than before, because like AI writes the code for you, which is what Pinkfish does, like you're describing, and AI is going and connecting to hundreds of systems, and it goes and kind of writes a piece of code for you. Uh, the most important thing comes back to truly being able to say what you want. And it said this before, and it's true even now, because it's much easier to learn how to write good prompts. But what was fascinating is we were working with this person, and he was an engineer, right? So he's an engineer and like really technical person. But being able to explain and being able to think through the problem in logical steps was really hard for this person. And a lot of it right now is like giving the right instructions. putting the right steps together, right? So putting the right sequence together. So that's where you're spending more time versus going and executing on the code and, finding bugs and debugging it and things like that. That's going to get like just massively, massively better every single day. But, going back to what do you learn in school, it's less of coding and it's more of like, how do you think logically in sequence for solving any problem, business problem, life problem? Like, how do you think logically in solving, right? And I think for people who are good at that, I think AI is just going to make it so much easier to make that a reality. And I think that's one thing that I would say, like, think about what's the best way to solve the problem with AI, less about how to execute and build it, right? So that's one of the areas. Surprisingly, we saw uh, a lot of people are still figuring out what's the best way to do that, but I think that's what's going to help.
You know what that makes me think? It makes me think that people need to, if you're trying to hone a skill set and you're trying to acquire new information, you should hone your decision-making abilities and read books like Ray Dalio's Principles, read books like The Effective Executive by Stephen Drucker, read books like that famous Andy Grove book that I have somewhere over there. I can't remember the name of it, but it was awesome. And it's basically about how the decision-making principles, high output management. There we go. High output management from Andy Grove. And then maybe, so that's like the decision-making side. And then there's almost like this being very cognizant of your thoughts and needs and understanding what's in your own head. So maybe like the toolkit of the future is decision making frameworks and information and practice and meditation or something like that.
Yeah, or a lot of this, you learn from playing strategy games, right? So, I mean, I'm like, people read books and then I play a lot of board games and things like that. So, strategy board games actually teach you a lot of logical sequencing of steps and, thinking, but it's the reality because we see two types of users right now. Users who are really good in logical thinking who've never coded before and they're able to like, do this beautifully, but others who might be technical, but the logical sequence thinking is still kind of like, it's hard. And then it becomes a little tricky, right? So I think the part of building is going to get, exponentially better every month with the industry today. And you see this with Cursor and everything else, right? Like just before you write the software, it writes the software for you. And, that's going to keep happening. How do you work with AI to get what you want? How do you provide the right instructions? How do you interact? So I think those are the things that are going to become really important because if you can do that, you can get so much done, so quickly.
How close do you think we are to AI being able to infer it and say, hey, your instructions were not particularly clear, but that's okay. Like I have enough information from other users and also your past history that I just filled in the gaps and I know what you really mean, even though you didn't express it.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like it's there even today for the most part, right? I think a lot of times it's, a lot of times in reality in enterprises, although AI is capable of doing that, AI may not have access to all the prior data of decisions that were made and, sequences that were created. If you gave all of it today, I think even right now, it's probably like 8 out of 10 there, right? So, but how do you give that context to AI so it's able to make some of those better decisions, which is the reason why I think when you're starting off, it's going to be slightly different than even in a year and a half from now, once it's able to, kind of do this multiple times.
And I'll give people an example here. We have way more data than we think we do. Like we're
Okay.
generating so much data as humans, and the fact that we have like a multitude of devices that are capturing it and categorizing it in some way. For my 5 month old, we have this app called Baby Connect. And every time he goes to sleep, we can track his sleep. And every time he eats, we track his eating. So we're able to basically, get data on, his routine. And my wife and I have pretty religiously taken that and every call it month or so, uploaded it to Chat GPT and said, how can we adjust his routines and make sure that we're helping him get more sleep and and having like a more kind of well-soothed day. And it's been awesome. It's been super, super, super helpful. So I might kind of point out to folks that like, you might not think, oh, I have a good data set, but chances are somewhere, somehow you do.
For sure. Yeah, it's actually that brings up a point. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Like I use ChatGPT and Claude and everything for pretty much every single thing today, right? So if, one day I think ChatGPT had an outage and I'm like, oh my God, I felt it. I felt it. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So how do you use it today other than the kids' recommendations, of course?
Yeah, I use it for pretty much everything, and I'll actually give you an example from today. I've been writing up a job description for one of the jobs at Balto, and I'm sitting there writing up the job description, and I'm starting by going line by line into a spreadsheet and saying like, let me list out all the different attributes that we care about. Let me then like describe each attribute, and I wrote it up line by line. And I said, okay, ChatGPT, take it, polish it, clean this up. And I put it in and asked to clean it up, and it came back like it was better in some cases, but it was flatter. It wasn't, in some cases, it wasn't better, right? Because it basically took me, my product that I put, and then kind of made it generic, if you will. So I did that. I said, I don't like this. Okay. I want you to actually instead go through line by line. We're going to do one line at a time. So I want you to go through each line of the spreadsheet, make your recommended edits per that line, and then I will tell you to continue. So it made one edit per line. I said, great, thank you, continue. Next edit line, great, thank you, continue. And then I get maybe, I don't know, 7 or 10 lines in. I'm like, you know what? If I just probably took a breath and read through this myself, I
Right.
would be able to do better, faster edits than I'm doing with
Oh, interesting.
ChatGPT.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I almost think that, it was actually one of the first times I've had that experience in a while, where I was like, wait a minute, should I really be using an LLM for this?
Right. Yeah, I guess if you know exactly what you want and like with exact things that you've written down already, I guess not. But I don't think I can say I've ever had that challenge so far. So I'm curious to see if I, run into that at some point. But it happens sometimes, and then I'll have to write instructions like, do not change anything else. Just clean this up, or just like, fix the grammar or something like that. But yeah, I haven't seen that issue so far, but it's fascinating.
I'll tell you one of the things I think that's been super helpful is their deep research tool. Um,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And basically, what it does for folks who aren't familiar is it'll take usually about 10-ish minutes, and you ask it a question and a very detailed prompt of what you want, and it'll go do, like per its name, deep research on that topic. So I've used that for a competitive landscape. I've used that for I want to create a presentation about how close artificial intelligence is to human level intelligence. I want to know these specific attributes, how it benchmarks on various tests, and I want your like assessment of how close it is. And it took 10 minutes and gave me an awesome, call it 10-page report that I then used to inform, a speaking event I was doing. So
Yeah.
deep research is one of my favorites.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I mean, there's so many things. Both OpenAI and Claude have gotten so much better right now, and especially deep research. It's so many use cases to use there.
I'm curious your thoughts on a lot of these like kind of browser capture tools. Like, OpenAI has something called Operator where you can type in what you want and it'll actually go throughout. It'll take control of your browser and you can say, I want you to buy tickets to Toledo and here's the price range and I want you to check out all the airlines, find the most least expensive one on these dates and it'll go through and it'll find the airline and click it and go all the way there until you finally have to confirm the purchase. It's like, I don't want to do this until you say, okay. OpenAI has that was one, Anthropic has their computer use. So, it seems cool that AI is, starting to kind of interact in the human world, if you will, because these internet browsers were built for people who have eyes and use mouses to navigate. But on the other hand, AI doesn't need that. It doesn't need to go through a browser. You can just have, AI talk straight to a database, or talk to, as example, maybe the Southwest Airlines database, or you could imagine an infrastructure where it in the back end just talks to all of them and says, here's my flight request. Who can give me the best deal? I'll book it, via API. So what do you think? What world is going to merge? Are we going to see a browser world, an API world? Like which one of those will win?
Yeah, I am super excited about the browser area, right? Actually, Pinkfish does that as well. But and here's the reason why. If you had asked me maybe like 7 years ago, I would have said it's API, like period. And coming from the engineering and product background, API is cleaner, it's faster, it's more beautiful. And I always thought it's API, and like every company is going to have API, every product is going to have API. The reality is not every product actually has good APIs, right? So then this was one of the major challenges. I talked about this 1,000 automation and 950 being like not automated. I bet most of them don't have APIs. So the minute you don't see APIs in enterprises, you're like, well, okay, like we'll wait until someone builds an API. And who knows when that's going to happen? That's going to take a really long time. So I think the browser automation unlocks the possibilities to use AI and automation in enterprises, right? Like never before. I'm saying never before because the concept was there before. The concept was there in the world of RPA, but it was very brittle in the sense once you build it, a small thing changes on the UI and you're done. You have to go and build it again. But with AI, it's learning, it's looking at your screen and it's making those changes. So it's not as brittle, it's smarter from that perspective. But I'm really excited about it. There are different types of use cases, and there for some, I think this is the only way. As an example, we're actually at Pinkfish, we work with a number of healthcare companies, and for many of them, they have to do enrollment or licensing or credentialing or these type of use cases where they have to go into public web forms, which don't have APIs, right? There are no APIs if you have to like go and register a member or, like go and do a paid enrollment and things like that. These are public web forms, no APIs, but these companies have to do this thousands of times every single day. And this takes a lot of time. And they have like, hundreds of employees every single day. They take like rows of data and go and manually like type it in, right? So, and even the people who are doing it, they don't want to do that. It's just like it's literally swivel chairing between a spreadsheet that has data and going and inputting in a form. And again, in the world of AI, you should not be doing that. So this, I think, opens up a lot of possibilities because there are browser AI agents today. Because without that, there are no APIs for use cases like these. And I think browser operators just come a long way, just again, in the last 12 months. And I think it opens up a ton of opportunities, possibilities, especially in healthcare, insurance, banking, and some of those industries which just did not have this possibility before.
Super interesting. It makes me think about how long we've spent building up the human world, like call it 2000 years building up the human world. And then we've only been building up the digital world for the last, 25. Obviously, it's a little bit skewed, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
And so we've built all this infrastructure in the human world, physical infrastructure being roads and highways and canals and all that stuff. But then in the digital world, the infrastructure is email and different interfaces that we can use to communicate with each other, and being able to use a web browser, and everyone knows how a website works. And so we've built so much there that it seems like catching up in a purely digital experience that doesn't have kind of a human element to it, that catching up is not like that would take a while compared to just AI getting really good at using the human world, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I often think about if every single company and platform and application out there was built today, because we're like, I mean, I think we're kind of, as you said, there are applications today, there are like there's API, there's no API, all that stuff. And then we're all using AI to kind of like traverse through all of these applications and databases and browsers today. But if everything had to start today with no baggage, how would the world look like? Right? So would it have applications or not? Would I just go and, like just uh, chat with my Google or Alexa or whoever and, get all my job done? Like, will there be applications? Will there be buttons? I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of like fascinating to sometimes think about if every single application was built after today, what would our ecosystem of applications, both commercial, like, personal and enterprise applications look like? And I bet 80% of those apps and UIs and buttons are not needed anymore, right? So it'll be fascinating experience to like go through everything new right now.
Wow. Where do you see AI going broadly, CK, over the next 3 years? where is this all going to go?
God, it's so hard because, as I said, even in the last 12 months, things have moved really, really fast. Technology is still moving faster than people know what to do with it, right? That's happening. And I think in the consumer world, we are all using technology like crazy every single day. So I think AI is going to be really, really better. That personally, for most of us, we're probably going to have like 70% of our time free. Maybe finally there will be 4-day work week. I've never believed in that. That's a different story, but it's possible. However, the more I talk to enterprises, it's slightly different, right? I think if you go to larger enterprises, there is still a massive gap between how fast things are moving. All of us using ChatGPT to, like change our job description and, like review our emails. But the minute you go to enterprises, you have to connect to hundreds of systems and, think through like how the process works in enterprises. I think it's still going to take some time for enterprises to truly adopt AI. So I think there's going to be a gap between how we use personally AI in the next 3 years. And I think enterprises would still be in fairly early stages. Right now, I think maybe it's like 0.5% adoption. Maybe it will be, 20% adoption, right? Or something like that in 3 years. But there's still a long way to go in truly adopting AI in enterprises versus for quick personal use cases. And I think that's going to happen again, to some extent in enterprises, but still a long way to go there.
If enterprises could move faster, would they want to?
I think they would, I mean, this is one of the fascinating things because I believe that risk-taking nature of enterprises, like the enterprises have actually become a lot more risk tolerant in the last 12 to 24 months.
Yeah.
Previous to that, I mean, we're a startup, right? Before that, if you go and talk to a CIO and, to adopt something from a startup, a lot of times people think about it, like, should I go and, get something from a startup? Should I go and get this new technology? But I think right now, people are starting to get ahead of it. I think most of the large enterprises do have a mandate to adopt AI. And if they could, I think they would. But a lot of times, there is a massive gap between the technology people, how we talk, and like about all the terminologies, and enterprises in terms of where do I get started. So, but I think the gap will get fixed more and more in the next few years. I do truly believe that enterprises are ready to adopt, but the question is, who's going to handhold them and help them adopt in the best possible way, and where do you get started? And I think a lot of the companies are already doing a really good job. But as an industry, we're in early stages. We're going to go from maybe like, again, 0.5% adoption to 20% adoption in the next 3 years, maybe more. But just looking and talking to a ton of CIOs, I think that's going to, potentially that's going to be the path, right? So a good level of adoption, but still a long, long way to go.
CK, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
You too. Thanks for having me. This is fun.